Hi everyone, thanks for joining. I have Alex here with me. Alex, thanks for joining us today.
True. It's good to be here.
Okay, so Alex, I just want to quickly start on a basic background, which is if you can give me a background about yourself and how you came into the localization and translation industry and what's happening now. That's more interesting.
So, I mean, my name is Alex Chernenko. I used to speak 6 languages since I was maybe 15 years old, and languages was always a passion of mine. Languages and technology. So I started working as a freelance translator interpreter for a number of agencies, and back in 2003, I came to Ireland, worked for a couple of different companies, and then decided to start my own language business back at the days. Uh, you know, Worked and grew it for 16 years, and last year I actually exited that business. So I'm no longer involved in translation localization, but I'm happy to share any insights. Since then, I mean, I'm a serial entrepreneur. Maybe serial entrepreneur is not a phrase that people like to use, but I would call myself, let's say, just entrepreneur. I have a couple of projects. I bought a few companies, sold a few companies. The translation one is I'm no longer involved as of last December. So it's been pretty much a month since I free up a lot of time to start something else. But my main focus at the moment is business registration, finance services, and we're building a technology that's going to change the way businesses track their financial performance. So release is scheduled for next month, and it's under name Vedi. I don't know, you're from India if you're familiar with Sanskrit,
Yeah.
but Vedi comes from Sanskrit, and it also comes from Old Slavonic language, which means wisdom and truth. So essentially, we're building a platform that's going to be will contain true information about companies, directors, and financial performance, allow businesses to make wise decisions. That's sort of the idea. So project is called Vedi, and next month you're going to learn more about it.
And this is separate from the business registration and the financial services that you.
It's under the same company, but we're just launching. Think of it this way: we're diversifying with the software. So doing just services. It's an agency model, but we believe that having a product that is going to strengthen the whole.
Okay, and just on the same line, I mean, I won't want you to reveal too much into it, but how have you incorporated AI? It's a very basic question if I ask you, right? Is AI integration a part of it? And the other aspect of it, of building a product, especially nowadays, I want to ask you is how do you plan to cope up with this, the ever changing, like the AI models and that's coming up? I think every other week there's something new coming up, right? So is that going to impact what you're creating, or is that going to be in line and
I think AI is impacting everybody, and AI definitely will replace some of the jobs, and AI will replace also some people, but it's gonna replace only jobs and people who cannot use AI. So for this year, I gave a sort of a strategic goal to all my departments, all my colleagues, to integrate AI in absolutely every part of business, if it of course makes sense. So the way we're planning to adopt it is that artificial intelligence is the part of a lot of aspects, but we're building in a way that if one model is sort of surpassed by another model, we'll be able to replace it. So when we started, for example, working with the platform, we ended up with like over 3 million PDF files that we needed to read, and we came up with 2 models. I'm not going to mention any names at the moment, just not to create any promotion or distraction, but we started with 2 models to read PDFs. 3 months later, we realized that there is now a different model that replaces, so we just replace it in the background. But for the end consumer, for the end user, it's not going to make a difference. So the way we're building it is that models can come and go. The quality benchmark could be, we're building sort of API level that connects to different model in the back office, but it's gonna still work on the front end. So it's gonna, it's not dependable on one particular AI model, and we'll be able to change them or use 2 or 3 models at the same time to get the best output for the end user, for the client, depending on what we're trying to do, whether it's character recognition, reading text, or doing financial analysis, or crunching numbers, or doing some sort of semantic analysis.
Okay, interesting. So we'll wait for the product to come out, and we'll come back to the AI, like AI as a topic a bit later. But I want to focus on something that, of course, you spent 16 years building, is the business side of it. Right? My first interesting question that I like to ask every entrepreneur is, if you had to start all over again, right? Let's say if you had to start a business all over again, I'm not talking about currently what you're doing, would you still go in the same industry as of now that you started 15 years ago?
Absolutely no. I think I'm very flexible entrepreneur when it comes. I usually kind of keep an eye on the trends. One of the reasons why I exited the language industry is because I think, and don't hold me as kind of knowing what's going to happen, but I believe that the risk of artificial intelligence taking our language industry is much higher than others. So it's gonna, I believe that in 3-5 years time, technology would become so good that it will handle voice very easily. So having human interpreters would not be as crucial for sort of general day-to-day stuff. Obviously, for legal and medical, human interpretation would still be considered as the preferred option, especially by government and public sector. But for day-to-day business, I think the direction we're going, that it's going to be replaced by AI. So my thought was that I would like to not see my company going down because of AI, but sort of pivot and move into different direction, and sell the company while it's still at the high valuation.
I'm sure. And that's interesting. In one of our other podcasts, we actually talked about AI voice agents, how it's massively coming into hospitality industry a lot. Their bots, let's say if you're booking a hotel, or like on a ground level, if I talk about, if you're booking a hotel or reservations, now you've got AI bots that are 24/7, who it's now very difficult to even
Distinguish.
distinguish that it's AI, because the response time has massively increased. So in the next, I would say you're right, in the next 3 to 5 years, and maybe less than that, it's gonna shoot up more, and those kind of, I would say, jobs, of course, are going to be impacted. But again, like you said, you need that kind of skills, and for businesses, it's very cost advantageous on a lot of times. That's what I think. But of course, it's then a debate from, I would say, AI versus jobs aspect of it, right? Okay, coming back to the business side of things, right? I would like to ask you, what is a difference in the current scenario of a business that survives, right, and the one that scales? What is it that founders need to keep in mind like when they're scaling a business, which is it could be process orientation, it could be I don't know, setting up systems in that way. So when it comes to a business that has a scalable capacity as compared to the one that is just surviving in the market, what is the difference that you think that there is?
This is a kind of a good question that could keep me talking for a long period of time, but I can share a couple of insights from different perspectives. First of all, it's ability to make assumptions and budgets. For a scaling entrepreneur, for growth, ability to do the right assumptions is crucial. And most of the times that founders will realize, anything that you plan, it usually takes twice as much time and twice as more expensive. So if you do a budget and you think it's going to cost you X amount of money to build the software, and it's going to take you, X numbers of months, it usually takes twice more money, twice more, sometimes it's even in threefold. So kind of a lot of entrepreneurs probably underestimate the risks of running out of money and the risks of doing something sooner than actually happens. And that takes a lot of businesses out of business pretty much. I think 60% of businesses are getting closed because of those inability to make proper forecast budget and estimate their cash flow, because if things go wrong. So that is getting better at budget assumptions, is probably, what separates businesses that succeed from those who fail. And in order to do that, it's either hiring a good finance person, or working with some sort of an agency who help you to do it, or just upskilling yourself. So that's one part of the story. Another part of the story is obviously going into the trend direction versus upward trend, rather declining trend. So businesses who were successful 5-10 years ago, they're not guaranteed to be successful these days. Just today, I was reading the news that stock markets of a couple of business finance analysis companies crashed between 7 to 12%. Like Intuit, QuickBooks software, I'm not sure if you're using QuickBooks, but Intuit shares crashed almost 10%. Moody, some other companies that were involved into essentially accounting, financial analysis, their shares crashed 10%. Why? Because Anthropic released a new model that could do that risk. So again, you see businesses that were striving up until today now see their shares crash 10%, and that could even go down. If the AI model can do it cheaper, faster, more reliably, why would you pay some consultancy firms money? And that's just one example. So again, being on that sort of upward trend, rather than, if you keep doing things that's going to be becoming cheaper to do with robotic technology, then your business probably will die. So staying ahead of that, getting the upward trend, but also sort of de-risking yourself is what allows you to scale. And third aspect is resourcefulness. So a solo entrepreneur with one or two person, it's very difficult to scale because they don't have resources. Sometimes a business needs to train the muscle and need to get more resources before they can grow. But that's like, you're not hiring an extra person to grow. A lot of businesses only hire when they already are out of capacity. Doing that one step ahead of time, sort of investing into resources, and then somehow the kind of more clients and more business comes. But if you're already at your 100% capacity, it's very difficult to go more, because staff is not motivated to take more jobs because they're already maxed at capacity. Your mental ability. So sometimes entrepreneurs need to sort of do not intuitive step. Hire the right person, buy the more expensive technology in order to scale, but it's not immediate. And that's what sort of separates the scale mentality versus reactive. You're proactive rather than reactive.
So that's very interesting. I like the point of forecast, right? Forecasting the cost of scaling. That's an interesting point. That's very true. Sometimes when you forecast the next cost when you have to scale, it's actually right. It's at 3 or 4x when you're actually scaling to that point. And okay, so we talked about the business, how to scale that, right? Now I want to also get into the founder mindset, or I would say the CEO or the founder mindset of it. Yeah. From day one, right? If I want to create a process-driven business, okay, we talked about how we can scale by investing in technologies and forecasting and people, right? But as a founder, if I'm starting from day one, what are some of the key points that a person needs to make sure so that a business is as process oriented and less person dependent? Because that is the main thing that businesses, especially in the SME scale that I'm talking about, struggle the most, right? How to make it less founder dependent or owner dependent and more on process dependent. That is like what mindset is very important. I think that's something.
A mindset. Usually, founders, entrepreneurs, they're visionaries. So, like if you look at let's say a bunch of founders and trying to characterize them by different skill set, you will see that there is probably two major categories of founders that dominate across everything else. Obviously, there are different types, but the main one is sort of a visionary, idea generator, leader. They're not typically process driven. They are not always technical, and that's sort of one cohort of founders. Another one is tech founders, who are actually kind of engineers or tech driven. And those two categories are usually predominant when it comes to founders. Somebody is like creative, idea, vision generator, like let's go. They're not process driven. And then there is tech founders who maybe have a really good technical skills, but they lack sometimes people skills. The process driven mentality, it's more of the execution based. So founders typically can fulfill that by hiring a person who is process driven. And obviously everybody can learn the skill if they want to, but if you see that the majority of founders, they actually don't have the process mentality from from just pure statistics point of view. So hiring the right person is usually going to solve that. But having to document everything and transition into process obviously is a painful task, and founders don't always have time to sit down and document everything. But that's inevitable. So either they have to suffer the pain and do it at some point, or they have to hire somebody who will help them do that process for them. And so that's kind of one element. Another element is that getting the system that tracks, whether it's a project management software like, I don't know, Monday.com or one of those, or Trello's, any sort of task tracking system, or getting into full CRM, customer relationship management, that sort of uses process. But getting the system and moving away from Excels and manual work would be kind of maybe first actual action they can take.
Okay, so yeah, of course, the CRM aspect. And very interesting thing that you talked about, well, when it comes to especially tech founders, is they know how to build, right? But when it comes to, and this is something I think in the last two podcasts we've definitely spoken about this, is building is just not enough. You have to go. You need to know. One is the market gap. The second is how marketing, or I would say branding, the presentation of it sometimes surpasses the product capacity. There may be two products. One is better than the other, but the other one has a higher marketing sometimes. Or I would say the perception, the branding sometimes. That is something that we've seen quite often, and we all know that there would be hundreds of better graphic design tools as compared to the one that is most commonly used. But because the most commonly used one is fantastic when it comes to branding, it sometimes surpasses. So, what's your take on this? I would say product versus marketing. What's your take on that aspect, especially because you're building a product?
Good package of a bad product can win immediately and in a short space of time, but good product sort of long term will survive. So marketing is helping to generate the early customers, and to get it right, that's what helps to generate sales and uh, allow sort of sales team to bring in faster revenue. But if the product is bad, even with good marketing, long term it's gonna fail. But sometimes a good product without marketing fails because they don't have a marketing. So good marketing at the beginning is a must, because it's gonna it's gonna remove the barrier of products not being known by enough people. But once the product gets enough user base, it sort of will promote itself, even if the marketing down the line is not going to be great. But at the beginning, I think it's more important at the beginning than sort of long term. Long term product wins. If the product is really good and it already has reviews, it already has some sort of presence, it's easier to sell it even if marketing isn't done to 100%. But at the early stages, it's crucial for businesses to sort of let them know. And the nicer the package is, it's probably easier and the faster they can sell it to others.
Okay, that's an interesting take. So in the short run, you say that marketing, of course, it helps to bring in users, but in the long run, product wins more than marketing.
Yeah,
Something like that.
unless the product heavily depends on marketing, and that
Of
way
course, then it's like you're trying to overshadow the how your product is. Okay. So, Alex, my next question comes on the exit strategy. Okay. How do you make sure, or how do you build a business or a platform or a product in a way that if you have, let's say, I have a plan in the next 3 or 4 years, I'm going to exit and sell this product or sell this agency, whatever it is, right? How do I make sure from the day one that the business is being built in that way? What are some of, I would say, your top 3 points that you would give?
Oh, I think the first step is to have a long-term goal for yourself, because once you visualize something, once you sort of work towards something, even if you don't do systematic steps, but you're still having like an end vision, it's easier to achieve it without a plan. Some businesses, they just operate and they never think of selling, and when the time comes, turns out that they have done a lot of mistakes throughout the years. So there's usually two business models. Somebody wants a leisure type business where they just grow it and it makes them income, and they want it that way. They don't want to scale. They don't want to conquer the world. They just want something that gives them enough income to keep them by, and they don't have ambitions to grow. And there's the other type of founders who actually want to sort of go and push and achieve something, and potentially they want to exit. So defining that for yourself, that's sort of the first step of the founder. But then there is a lot of things that come up, is again processes that we talked earlier on. Is the business running on processes, or it's relying just on decisions of a single person? So the more the business is interconnected with the founder, if the founder is that sort of person, a bottleneck that without them the business just falls, then it's not essentially a sellable business. If you take a business and you remove the founder, if the business falls apart, nobody's going to be interested to buy it. So it's sort of counterintuitive. A founder wants to be that sometimes decision makers, but the more they let go, the closer the business becomes to being interested to be acquired by somebody. So sort of building that as the one mentality, and doing step throughout, hiring the next person, building more processes, moving, delegating this area of work, then over another year, another area of work. That's what the founders should be doing pretty much. So that's kind of one element, processes. Then legal structure. Again, if the business has a complex share structure, that a founder has shares, then they give shares to their friend, shares to their mother, aunt, and there is like multiple small investors. That's going to create issues down the line when the buy got. So having a very clear sort of share structure from day one is also a good thing, without any complexities.
Okay. Well, that's a very interesting take. I think it all comes down to that process orientation and delegation of decision making. I think that's really important. All right. Uh, I think, Alex, we've discussed a few interesting points, and thanks for this. Thanks for your insights. We're pretty excited for the new product that's coming in, and yeah, all the best to you.
True. Thank you for having me. It was an interesting conversation. I hope that the listeners will get some thoughts for their sort of future startups. I really admire entrepreneurs. One of the reasons why I started Chern Co business is actually to make sort of business accessible to others. So if somebody wants to try business, they're afraid of taxes, accountancy, all the sort of secretarial paperwork, regulation. So when somebody takes it away, it's easier for the founders to actually focus on their idea, on their business, and not sort of this boring, complex stuff. So people who want to try this, that's kind of why I'm doing what I'm doing. I like to help that kind of people, and I admire somebody who has that creativity, who wants to build something, who came up with the idea that nobody else had, and I'm helping them to actually do it so that they can focus on their baby versus all the other complexities and bureaucracy.
And that's for entrepreneurs, not just in Ireland, anywhere in the world. And you can
Yeah, I mean, we have clients who are choosing Ireland as their sort of starting point for many reasons, not just the tax points, but accessibility to funding, capital growth, English speaking market. So customers from China, India, Eastern Europe, they would come in and actually start sort of their global business from Irish base.
Yes. All right. Thanks, Alex. Thanks a lot, and we wish you all the best for your future endeavors.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Alex.